So I thought I'd capture another sort of random episode of my journey back to health. And today one of the things that I'm doing is I was harvesting another round of sprouts that I did on the sprouter that I showed in my last video, which was gives these guys. This time these are green pea shoots, and I have to say they grew so much more beautifully than the sunflowers that I grew. I always find the sunflowers are quite a pain to grow. They just wind into each other, but these guys grow really nice and they're very tasty. So I would recommend the sprouter if you're willing to put in just a little bit of work that it takes into keeping its maintenance and the cleanup involved, but you do get a nice result. And you know what? It costs you nothing to do this, as opposed to buying bags of sprouts anywhere from $3 to $6 depending. But yeah, so the thing I'm going to talk while I trim these guys, the thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is I just a few days ago did a session of colonics, or colon hydrotherapy as it might be called. And for anyone who doesn't know, this is just basically you go to a practitioner or a clinic where they have machines set up for you to basically cleanse your bowels with purified water that's gently streamed into your anus. And this really ejects a lot of the stuff that's been sitting in your bowel for a long time. And having done this, I've noticed that my bowel movements have become more regular, like 2 times a day, whereas before it was like once a day maybe. And what would be considered really healthy is to have a bowel movement every time for as many meals as we eat in the day. And also an interesting thing with doing the colonics is that because you just made way and cleared the way for all the stuff that's been sitting there to come out, when you start eating meals after that, however long it takes for that meal to come out when you have your first bowel movement, gives you a good idea of how constipated you are. And believe me, pretty much everyone's constipated. If your transit time is anywhere from longer than 12 to 16 hours, that's constipation. So it took 2 days for me to have a shit, basically, after doing the colonics, which is better than the first time I did colonics 2 years ago. It took me 3 days to have a bowel movement. So that means that the food I ate was stirring in my body for a full 2 days before it came back out. Now, along with this, with all the supplements that I've been taking as well, and especially the probiotics and what we consider neutral fungi called Saccharomyces boulardii, I feel that this has been stirring a lot of movement in my gut and probably changing the terrain enough that the parasites and pathogenic whatever that might be inside of me isn't liking so much. And so I had I've been having a lot of fatigue, which is common when these things are acting up, as well as a little bit of more looser bowel movements as well. And what's probably less talked about is the irritability and the emotional surges that come with beginning cleansing in the body. Even when I was doing the colonics, I noticed that at one point when something was coming out of me, that I just had spontaneous bouts of laughter. And that's one of the ways that I know that like blockages inside of me, not just physical but emotional, because they're all linked. That's how I know that I released a blockage, because I have just bouts of hysteric laughter. And so I know that release was beginning a process, and things that shouldn't be in me were getting out of me. And as I'm continuing to cleanse, and I'm finding that it is becoming a little easier, still challenging, but a little easier to be more loving to myself in terms of being able to say no to certain indulgences or certain foods that I might have addictive impulses to gravitate at, but I know are actually going to be damaging to me. And so it's becoming easier to say no to that. But there's an emotional backlash to all of this. When we stop giving in to addictive tendencies, then emotions start to come up. And so a lot of irritability frustration, anger even towards people in my immediate environment, people that I live with. And yeah, it's really bringing to light how important it is to voice these things. You need to have a voice for the emotions that we suppress. Doing a physical cleansing, I think, is definitely a beautiful trigger to get that process going. And I don't think you could actually really do it separately. I don't know if a person would be successful to do emotional cleansing without doing the physical cleansing, or the other way around. For instance, someone that I'm supporting right now, she has so much physiologically that is holding her down and weighing her down, and just her health is not good physically. But she does a lot of work spiritually, and she does a lot of energy healing and Reiki and she's a very giving person. But I see that disconnect, that there's a strong focus on healing the emotional body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, and all that. But the physicality is just left to the wayside. And you're never going to be able to have a really good and highest expression of yourself if you don't tackle all the bases. So we need to address the physical as much as the unseen energetic properties of us. And I think that we need to be really honest with ourselves. I need to be really honest with myself. That when I'm facing any challenge, to actually see what's the emotion that's coming up. What am I holding back that I don't want to express because maybe I don't want to be hurting someone, even though no one can really hurt another person. Like, people may trigger things for others, but it's your shit. You have to own it up. And so as things come up for me, I need to be honest that I'm looking at the reason why it's coming up and processing that emotion, not holding it in. This is very therapeutic. It's very hard. And yeah, call it the dark nights of the soul, call it doing your shadow work, whatever term you give it. This doing work on yourself, it takes exactly that. It takes work. It's work. And everyone's motivated by desire. So the question just becomes of, do you have a desire to actually honestly grow and become a better person, become a more holistic being, more capable, more creative? Or is your desire to stay in comfort and what's familiar and the habits, the addictions, the things that you think are sustaining you, but really they're actually putting you in decay and giving you an earlier death, or giving you very ill health and poor energy? So we really have to look at what is our desire. And when we decide that we want to make changes in our life to grow and to be a better version of ourselves, are we doing it because we're trying to get away from what doesn't feel good? Or are we doing it because we want to genuinely just be creative and experience joy and just see this world through a really like the eyes of a child, just wanting to play and to explore? And I'm striving for that. But in being honest with myself, I have to recognize when I'm doing certain habits, whether it be with food or some obsessive compulsive tendencies, to not lie to myself and be like, yeah, right now I'm eating this food because it's making me feel better, and today I just don't want to deal with it. Like, if that's what you need to do, fine, do it. But don't justify it to say that, oh, it's okay just to do it once in a while. Like, no. Recognize that you are giving into your addiction right now because you don't have the will in this moment to make the more loving choice for yourself. So love instead the choice that you made, even if it's one that's not the healthiest. Because the last thing that you need is guilt building up on top of you because you think that you did something unloving. So this is an ongoing practice. It's been very hard. The people that I'm living with in my current arrangements, living in the city of Toronto, living with two women for the first time, having moved out of my parents' home again for probably the third time now. There's a lot of triggers. There's a lot of opportunities for marriage to happen, and a lot of opportunities to practice loving responses to other people, to not hold them in contempt and in judgment. That when something comes up and I feel angry, that, hey, this is an opportunity to to genuinely and honestly grow by sharing what I feel and not holding back, not holding it in and creating another blockage, because this whole point of cleansing the physical body and the spiritual energetic bodies is to allow these blockages to clear. So we're doing the exact opposite if we try to hold back because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or I just don't want to feel a certain way. Well, we got to go through these things. We got to cross the bridge to see the new horizon, you know. So I wanted to get that off my chest because it's been a really hard week for me, doing this beginnings of my purging. And yeah, more to come. Thanks for holding space.